On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Michal Scheffler. Miow goes by a number of different names. He has a Shipibo name, a couple other names, so you may find him online with some other names as well. He was introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, Marta, who I interviewed in one of the earlier episodes of this podcast, maybe 16, 13, if I'm remembering. She spoke very highly of him. I did a little bit of research, and I was really happy to bring him on. Mihaw's a really fascinating guy. He's led a really, I think, full and varied life. We spoke about his background, growing up in Poland, and then spending a lot of time working as a DJ, and kind of how that's a common theme of these ideas of music and trance, which got him into psychology and eventually into this world of plant medicine. We spoke about his journey to Latin America. He originally spent time in Panama, where I believe he began working with someone from the Santo Daime community or church, working with Ayahuasca. That led him into different places in South America, working with the Shuar, I believe, and in Ecuador, and then in Brazil, the Huni Queen, the Yawanawa, Shipibo people. I believe he spent time with various Taitas in Colombia, learning about some of the Andean traditions. So really a fascinating journey. And then, we really got into some fascinating topics. We realized that we both shared a mutual teacher, I think very dear to both of us, whose name is Amika, from the Tubu Nation of the Colombian Amazon. So we spoke about some really interesting topics, things like the power of the word, which was very much influenced by that lineage, storytelling, his journey into fatherhood, a lot about, obviously, ayahuasca and plant medicines, and then also his kind of journey into a community he started called IMAGO, very interesting, and also about the plant dieta. We spoke a bit about that, which he's about to embark on. So I think we went close to 3 hours, which, as you've maybe heard me say before, I think that's always a sign of a really good podcast where we go quite deep into some topics. So after this conversation, I really have a lot of respect for Michal, the path that he's been on. I think the wisdom from the words that he speaks, the way that he speaks is really a testament to the quality of the work that he's done. It's a rare thing. There's a lot more people who are doing this work, but I think very few who've done it in the depths and the wisdom, the lineages, the respect that I think a lot of these plants or traditions really carry. And for me, it was very apparent that he's really embodying that wisdom. So I think and trust you'll all really get a lot of this out of this episode. My colleague Marav Artsy and I, we are running our next plant dieta in the Sacred Valley of Peru in November, although that retreat is sold out. We have another retreat coming up after that, again in the Sacred Valley, which is in February, which at the time of recording this, we still have some spaces open. And then also at the time of recording this, we just opened our first European dieta, which will be in Portugal. I believe the dates are April 21st to May 8th, if I'm correct. It was the place we were at last year. We had a really good experience there, and they offered for us to come back. So that should be a really beautiful opportunity. And also we're finalizing our location and dates to go back to Ireland. So that will probably be in the latter half of the summer. So if you'd like more information on that, you can view my website at nicotianarustica.org. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then, as always, if you're able to support this podcast, that's a really big help to me. Patreon is a really good option. It's a website you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. There's different tiers you can sign up for. Those tiers give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. To all the people supporting that way, as always, thank you very much for your support. It means a lot. One of the reasons reasons I like websites like that is they really work off this idea of reciprocity. So if you feel like you're gaining something from this podcast, that's a really beautiful way to give back and to support this work. If you're not able to, as always, helping with the algorithms is also a very big help. So if you're viewing this on YouTube or Rumble, hitting the subscribe button, turning on the notification bell, liking the video, and if you're listening to this, Apple Podcasts and Spotify are still the big ones, and leaving a starred rating and a short review. So I think that's it for the intro. It was maybe a rather long intro, but I hope this finds you all well. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation with Miow, and without further ado, here is the episode.
Running out from the maze, running out from the maze, running out of the maze today. Running out from the maze, running out from the maze, running out from the maze today. I'm running out from the maze, running out from the maze, run out of the maze today.
Well, great, man. Well, thank you so much. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct, Miow. The only reason I know that is because I have another Polish friend named Miow. So,
Well, you've been very well prepared, I would say, as I joke from time to time. And we just spoke at our little warm-up word that we are new fathers. So we officially have a license for that joke. So I would say that you pronounce my name even better than my own mother. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. We were chatting a little before we started, and you were recommended to me by a very dear friend, someone who I worked with for a long time, and I have a lot of respect for her. Her name is Marta. I'm sure she'll be happy for us saying that. But she really recommended you highly to me. She's recommended a few guests, and I've really trusted her intuition. I also it's been interesting. I've been reaching out to her a number of times now that I am a father, just for some kind of motherly advice, specifically about Peru, where we'll be soon. So she's been super helpful, and I really like her mind when it comes to things. I think we share a kind of a common viewpoint. So thank you very much for coming on. It's possible some of the audience knows you, especially because, as we were talking about beforehand, you seem to know a lot of the guests I've had on. So I imagine out in the ether there's some mutual connections out there. But for anyone who hasn't, and I know this is always a big question, but maybe you can just speak a little bit about yourself, about who you are, your background, and kind of what brought you to this point in life where you're at right now.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be learning with you, to be sharing a little bit of the word. And beforehand, as you already mentioned, I would like to offer a word of gratitude and a prayer for this portal of the following chapter of motherhood that Marta is stepping into at this very moment, as I know. And we spoke also before about the power and the force of the parenthood in general, that maybe we'll tap in a little bit more into. And as for now, yes, my name is Miow. I carry a few names on this path within the Shipibo tradition. Sanken Koshi, to me, introduced as this guardian of the sacred geometry, of the balance, of the vision, and in the Yawanawa tradition, Yawa, which is the communicator. I've been on the path with the plant medicine for the last 11 years. Meanwhile, living in between Latin Europe and Latin America. Actually, my academical background with psychology started in Portugal, where you are at right now, where I did my first degree in psychology, then doing my master's degree in psychosocial intervention, bringing this fascination into my daily life about how community group social dynamics support the healing and bringing an individual into more cohesion with the life that we confront on the day-by-day base. I'm originally Polish, born in Poland, yet I have a little bit of Austrian roots. Some people recently, as I'm experimenting with my face front antenna, say that I might have some Viking roots as well. Haven't discovered that yet. They're inviting me to my DNA test. I'll tell you afterwards. I live at this moment in Costa Rica, at the skirts of the mountain Chiripo, which is the highest of the Apus here in this territory of the center. I moved in here after living for around 7-8 years in Panama. That attracted me very strongly within the understanding and the contemplation of this deeper tissue of the prophecy of the eagle condor, Shambhala warrior, all this encounter of the north and the south, the mind and the heart. And Panama is and has been a crucial point for that because of the cut that happened there through the Panama Canal. That's sort of a manifestation, materialization of that, and a new opportunity of the encounter of the territories that has been happening and coming into the light over the recent years, and we've been feeling them within and without on different levels. I am a founder and a leader of IMAGO Community, which is an established plant medicine church existing in California, New York, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and Brazil, and also with the groups and circles in Panama and in different places, mainly around the Great Americua. Our why is condensed in a sentence saying, remembering the magic we are, which refers to the possibility of giving an opportunity to individuals to see beyond the veil of the illusion, and through communitary and social interactions to come into a remembrance of how to care for life. Therefore, plant medicine is the central consultant. Yeah, it's our counsel. Yet the main technology that we tap into is bringing the ancestral wisdom in the new times through the way as we sustain ourselves as a group, as a community, as a herd, as a pack. As already mentioned, being a psychologist fascinated by the communitary dynamics, we realized that, call it in the modern context, the integration, or already in this bridging perspective, the remembrance of how to bring the word of our elders into the new times. The togetherness is the heart of it all. I'm a father of a 2.5-year-old and his wonderful twos, yeah, that you will still get to realize. Definitely the most powerful cup of medicine and beautiful journey in my life. I live in an expanded family in a non-hierarchical polyfidelity in a dedicated triangle, and I dedicate myself at this moment as one of my priorities to the study of gardening and caring for the garden within and without through living with the soil. And this one of these most important territories that is the one that we inhabit, our earth. I think that's good for now.
I saw maybe it was on your bio or one of the interviews you did, and I think even on YouTube that there's a number of videos of you as a DJ. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting path. I mean, even kind of broadly speaking, when we speak of these plant medicines, for lack of a better word, or sacred medicines, in a lot of the cultures we come from, whether it's in a lot of European culture, American culture, where I think we become disconnected to these traditions, to these plants, to these ways of being. I think inevitably a lot of young people seek maybe a similar experience through music, through dance, through this kind of subculture of really, feeling that whether it's a rhythm, a cadence, a resonance, a movement, a loss of oneself in often like a group setting, a communal setting where I think something is lifted, something spaces, and this may sound weird, but certain spaces can be tapped into that somehow give us a sense that there is more of a possibility to life than kind of the routine that we're brought up in. Does any of that resonate, or because it's interesting because I think a lot of people who end up being drawn to this path have may not necessarily, but it can be a common archetype where people are coming from some aspect of that culture.
Oh yes, oh yes, beautiful. Um, so as our teachers say, when we come into a conversation of this sort, listening to the field, we start to resonate, the word that you used, with what is available there, what different threads are available to weave with, so that we can bring the fabric of our transmission. And those threads are connected to different sources of wisdom, different sources of knowledge, and they manifest themselves in different set and setting with different opportunities. Let's see where we can grab this thread specifically, because there's so many things opening in this basket. I've throughout the years, I've learned to appreciate all different paths of knowledge and path of discovery of consciousness, of that, once again, looking behind the veil of the illusion and wanting to break through, to give a little bit more of sense beyond understanding, a deeper feeling to what is something that I believe that everybody who's listening to this podcast, in certain way, we've sensed it, we've known, and that's why we started to pursue it deeper. The electronic music scene, and not only electronic music, however, yes, the festival scene, the trance scene has been very, very important, as the different tools by the common system known as drugs, by the science called psychedelics, yet by many indigenous, within their ancestral approach, still being considered the modern tools of knowledge, have been giving the humanity a possibility to tap into a little bit of that space of what's behind, what do we experience when we can reach a little bit beyond our mind, where we can experience the death while we live, that ego death, which is already a scientific term in the study of psychedelics, and then can be deepened on a different way in the ritualized context. One of the speakers on your podcast, a dear friend and a teacher, Amika, he speaks from the knowledge of the proposal of the Tubu Nation, that the dance is one of the highest of the expressions of human consciousness, or this collective dance. And actually, Mika, I hope you you remember that Amika told me once, like, Michal, you need to play music for people, you need to DJ for them at the ceremonies or after the ceremonies. And I was like, are you sure? Yes, that's what they need. That's the highest expression of that collective consciousness, the dance. It's all about the dance, and the dance allows us to understand that every fear, everything that that we're living in is just a theater of life, a theater of illusion, and our goal is to dance with it. And throughout, at this moment, 22 years approximately that I have of DJ experience behind me. Nowadays, spinning more on special moments of some festivals where when I go to Burning Man, sometimes doing a little bit of a dance after the ceremonies. I realized that in essence, in its foundations, it wasn't that different from leading a ceremony with plant medicine. Yeah, attention to the crowd, attention to the emotion, to the energy, to the feeling, to the thought that is moving in the circle, dancing with this energy, receiving and providing to the people, and working with this concept that the Brazilians call a corrente, yeah, which is the current of energy that moves in the circle. It moves in the ceremonies, and what in the Andes is called alho porpo. Alho porpo is the living body, where everybody can feel one another and themselves as one organism, in which they can elevate their state and incubate a possibility to break the veil of time and space and enter into a different form of feeling. And that can be felt on many parties of different sort, with different substances, not necessarily the new transformative festivals where the approach is more conscious. One of the most important gates on my spiritual path, and where actually I met Amika and many of my teachers, was Tribal Gathering Festival, which was strongly criticized by many and seen with a subjective eye, as it was kind of bridging the strong psychedelic party with a lot of substances that are normally present there, with the other side of it, which was the encounter of over 40 different indigenous nations bringing their rituals, their prayers, representing their cultures and idiosyncrasies. And that was in a certain way a proof of concept that both sides weren't that different. Yet the people that were coming and were discovering this possibility on the side of the party, they were being led more by their intuition and curiosity to discover it. And then the indigenous were bringing the structure, the geometry, the foundation of a ritual and an altar. And that has built a big part of the community that we are right now, and that quite a few of my teachers and elders are holding right now. Therefore, it's not that different. For me personally, the big moment of change was, I remember one night I was DJing a pretty big party in Panama City, and I came into certain frustration, feeling that how am I to sustain what we're living at this moment? How we can ingrain, land it, settle it, and root in what is happening right now, so that it can last, so it doesn't just taper out after this weekend, and then people start getting messy over the week, super stressed, and they look for this place to escape, and it becomes this escapism in a certain way. How to sustain it? And soon after, and that was around 11 years ago, I felt the call to work with the medicine, to which I was connected by the people from the same environment, a more celebrative party environment. And nowadays, I definitely acknowledge that we do bridge, not in a syncretic way, and as also Amika says, in a complementary way, not overlapping, yet complementing what the ancestral wisdom brings, the teachings of our elders, with these new ways to speak to people, the language of the music, as it also is shown nowadays. There's new instruments that have appeared, and as you probably know, big part of the prayers of the indigenous nowadays includes instruments that weren't present there even 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Like, it's been around 30 years that Yawanawa received their guitars. It hasn't been much longer that the indigenous, the Taitas from the Colombian Amazon received their gaitas, their harmonicas, their rondines, and nowadays the presence of the sound baths with all sorts of instruments has been very powerfully empowering the medicine work and supporting the sustaining possibility of what is the integration of the psychedelic, the medicine, or as we are taught as well, let's go beyond calling the plant medicine. Let's call the plant medicine the tools of knowledge, because they're much more than medicine. There's part of the healing, yet there's a big part of the study. So I hope I grabbed the question from the right side.
That's a really interesting topic. I mean, it was something that came up in a recent interview I did where I was interviewing a mycologist, and obviously from his point of view, that there's a very big problem with the word plant medicine, because it's actually excluding an entire kingdom of medicines, again, for lack of a better word, but the fungi kingdom. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I mean, like I'll also just find myself using certain words out of habituation, but it's a word or a phrase that also doesn't necessarily resonate, but I haven't necessarily come to a better term either. But I think, as you were saying, one of the interesting things about the inherent idea of medicine is often when we translate words, and this is where so many of cosmovisions come into language, but in the West, we tend to look at medicine as something that heals something, and usually physical, predominantly physical. Mm-hmm. And as you said, I mean, I do like that phrase medicine, because I think in indigenous views, they would also refer to these plants, or also animal medicines or fungi medicines, as medicine. But often, many of these words, such as a word like ayahuasca, like in the Shipibo, is uni, and it has this sense of knowledge, and so one who works with uni is like a wisdom keeper. Even that kind of generic term of shaman, it's that idea of sama, which is also to know. So, tobacco, which I do a lot of work with, it's often referred to as that which allows us to dream like God dreamt the universe into creation. It's that which lifts up the veil and allows us to see. So there's this deeper sense of not only medicine, but of knowing, of being, of sight, of intuition, of a deeper connection to something. And also, I think it's interesting, because when we use that term plant medicine, and it's kind of like what came before, the chicken or the egg, but obviously the way a lot of these plants are being worked with is more now in this kind of Western medical model of medicine, that they're used to treat very specific things. And while I think there's an extreme benefit to that, and a lot of work being done, really, really good work, I think sometimes we forget that there is perhaps something more to these medicines, which is, as you said, something along this line of knowledge, of wisdom, and maybe something along that is being forgotten. I know that was kind of a big thing, but just It's interesting because it seems like maybe that's something you've thought of, that idea of plant medicine, because you brought up maybe some of the limitation that word has in it.
Thank you. Yeah, you're definitely tapping into a space and an upper perspective that is of a huge passion for me. I would dare to call myself a linguist. I communicate in different languages day by day. I'm also in the study of the three indigenous languages, which is Yawanawa, Shipibo, and Quechua. And I'm personally very, very fascinated about the etymology of the words and how language in certain way, because when we tap into the ancestral wisdom and the philosophy, we always speak of through the metaphors, and we also speak about the paradoxes. Therefore, language that allows us to understand. The word understand is also itself a very, very interesting term. From a perspective of contemporary civilization, is liberating us as we are able to grasp a concept. Yet, if we come into or playing with that word of what would be understanding or a comprehension that goes beyond the logic of the words itself, we know that language also boxes in certain ways, certain things, and while we grasp them, it doesn't many times allow us to see beyond what we've learned. And within this work with plant medicines, if we approach them as more universal tools of knowledge, and we can see how that impacts the perception of the humanity on what is medicine as a healing tool for specific disease, for specific illness, for specific sickness. That's why and that's a huge other topic that we could speak of, how the system is approaching right now, the legalization and the conceptualization of plant medicine as the medicine within all the studies, and considering all the factors that it impacts, how it isolates different elements, while it studies its efficacy or efficiency in healing a human being. It becomes very limited. Many times we're not taking into consideration the whole biodiversity of the set and setting. It's much more than whether ayahuasca, just as an example, can heal any issues in your gastrointestinal system. It involves like, what does this medicine and your whole body, your soma and all of your bodies, your ethereal, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, interacts with your whole social system, as we already spoke, and you were mentioning the mycelium. There's this whole interconnectedness and interdependentness that needs to be considered. And the biggest revolution on the path of our community, as initially we used to call ourselves, we started in Panama, and we were calling ourselves Somos Medicina. That was the circle, like we are medicine. And there was already that code of the empowerment, of remembering that we have it all. Yeah, like from biochemical perspective, okay, those tools come, but those are not the tools that are healing or are empowering. Maybe those are the receptors that are receiving them, and they can communicate with them, and it's already in us. Yet beyond that is us remembering once again that we are interconnected, and all, as within, so without, as above, so below. We are the reflection of the greater fabric and all of the possibilities that are in it. And within that code or that formula, we there's two things that I want to mention here. We had a moment in which we observed, okay, we're here, but what we're doing here? And that was like after this first question, like, okay, I see this moment, how to sustain it. And then I was once again years after, I was encountering myself in an ayahuasca ceremony, and I'm like, okay, we're here, but how to sustain it? What are we doing here? Are we just healing our own personal processes, our trauma, becoming better people? Is there something else? Yeah, like, is this for now within this absolute presence, or is there really a possibility of generational prayer, of something that not necessarily is dogmatic or prophetic in this we call it in this conspiranoic perspective? And with that, we received the teachings of the Tubu from the Amazon, and we received also different stories of the origin, stories and foundations of the law of the origin of the Andes. And that encounter, that bridge in between the Andes and the Amazon, gave us a new sense, a new direction, and started magnetizing all the parallel, analogical, mirrored prophecies. Shambhala warrior, eagle and condor, rainbow people, Chakaruna, the bridge people, the encounter of the mind and the heart, the encounter of the north and the south, the encounter of the east with the west, the coming together of what in an illusionary way got separated, and understanding that it is all one. And from there, we started understanding and being actually taught in a very straightforward, clear word that, and you can observe it, like, for sure, you've seen it in many ceremonies and many examples. There's people that come to the ceremony for the first time, they come again, and there's a few ceremonies, they start to tap into a different level of perception, discipline, and everybody wants to become a guardian. Yeah, everybody wants to support, everybody wants to care. There's this moment in which, like, we realize that, okay, there's more thing to do on my personal level, yet I feel called to go beyond myself. And many spiritual leaders, and just to mention, within, again, this mirroring and this fractal of the same codes and different philosophies, Jesus also said, like, when you look for the kingdom of God, the rest will come in addition, the rest will happen. And we start realize that when we come into this collective prayer and we go beyond ourselves, our personal healing comes into the important word that you mentioned at the beginning, into this resonance. And we start to, in this homeostatic opportunity, come into the resonance with the cycles of the nature. Once again, we start to observe how the nature moves, how we can relate with it, with her. By us at our warm-up talk, as we were greeting, I mentioned the importance of the garden. The garden teaches us how to understand the cycles of the nature, when to plant, where not to plant, which seeds correspond to a different moment, which not. And that takes us to the whole universe of how to cultivate a family, how to raise a family, and how to come into relations with our partners. How we men can relate from one side with these cyclical beings of the water that move with the four moments of the moon, which are the mysteries themselves, the women, and how to discover this feminine element inside of us as well. So I believe strongly, and it gave me a lot of relief and open a deep surrender that as we want to grasp more knowledge, and we're learning from the plants and from the nature, we return to a simplicity. We learn to go beyond ourselves, to care for everything that surrounds us, to synchronize with the nature, and within that, observe how our internal weather as an individual. Our teachers teach us about the 4 territories. The first one is the territory of the individual, our own first territory, our body and all the bodies within. Then the second are our direct relations, our partnerships, and direct relations with different people in our closest family, the chosen family, friends, and so on and so forth. Then we come into the collective, the community, family first of all, then the community, the nation, the humanity, and lastly, the fourth one is the land, the soil. And only when we integrate all of them within this dance, which is not different, it's all a fractal, it's all this breaking through the concept, as we know, of the space and time, and perceiving it as a spiral in which everything reflects itself and one another, and teaches us how the life simply is and moves through the same cycles in all different dimensions.
Yeah, beautiful. So you found yourself in Portugal studying psychology, and again, I think this is another quite common archetype for many people who find themselves on this path. Was that something that you innately knew that there was something in that field that was calling you, or was there something that happened that drew you to that field? I remember I would often joke, or some of the Shipibo who I worked with would joke with me that people would call them like shamans or healers or teachers, and they would often kind of as a joke say they were shipikologos, like shipi psychologos, that they were basically like their main work was psychologists. They were just trying to listen to people, to talk to people, to heal them. I think, and especially with many of the Westerners who were coming down, like through this level of the mind, through understanding the psyche. And yet at the same time, like the psyche, I think, is something that's very maybe not fully understood as well, because even, we were speaking about etymology, and I think that word comes from the Greeks, and we translate it as the mind, but the Greeks didn't view it as solely the mind. They also viewed it as this body, mind, spirit connection. And so even that realm of psychology, I think a lot has been lost. And certainly there's I think people who are quite revolutionary in that field, like Carl Jung comes to mind, and I think even a lot of the work of Carl Jung was very shamanic in a way. I mean, he drew a lot of his wisdom from indigenous cultures all
Very
over
much.
the world, and then also a direct experience, which is a very kind of archetypal shamanic path as well, as he drew from his own direct experiences working within the dream world, which I think maybe for people who aren't as familiar, I mean, that dream space for some could be said to be symbiotic or even synonymous with kind of this shamanic realm, that there's so much information there, so much that can be taught. So I guess the question is, was that idea of psychology, is that something you were drawn to from a young age, or was there something that kind of led you into that path? And do you see that path as then a natural progression of what's followed for you since then?
Undoubtedly. As we are already referring the names of the huge wisdom weavers of the contemporary thought. I was very young. I was probably 11 years old at those first steps of the opening of a more social consciousness, as they teach us. I remember I had moments in which I was sitting and I was being sort of fascinated, flabbergasted, and overwhelmed. Like, whoa, like I'm thinking, yeah, like, and what is this huge universe that I can travel to through my thoughts, like all these different dimensions of reflections. Yeah, and am I the only one experiencing it, at least within myself, or not? And though I believe that those were like pretty Sartrean first realizations of this existentialism of like, okay, I am here free within myself to embrace within this freedom any path, any possibility. And that started to draw me towards experimentation with my thoughts. And then at a pretty young age, being 13, 14 years old, called me to become a young psychonaut. Let's let's say, call it in this way. And I remember the first times even communing with Santa Maria, cannabis, or J. Moreau, with as many names she has. I was taking my journal with me and reporting, registering on all the experiences that we were living, and soon after we started organizing. We didn't even know about rituals, ceremonies, yet kind of intuitively with my friends, we were looking for these musical albums that were serving us as a sound journey and the foundation for the exploration with the first substances that we tried. And that eventually, as you deduce, led me to my path of DJing, and then expanded to the study in different ways of how the energy and our expansion within different of our bodies and the study and our consciousness correlate. I have learned a lot through psychology as one of the perspectives of how you can perceive human mind, of one of the attempts, and it allowed me to from one side to grasp certain context and then eventually to let go of them. And similarly, on my first experiences with ayahuasca, which were related to the Colombian Kamcha and Inga indigenous current, I had this realizations that, okay, there's so much information, we're learning so much, yet if there was a Jahe book, a book of ayahuasca, I had this strong feeling, that was like one of my first downloads, I remember many years ago, like the last page probably would be, now allow yourself to forget everything. So this dance in between gathering knowledge, however, at the same time, not consuming it and allowing to let go of it was crucial. This fascination with the psychology at one moment made me realize that organically I was dancing, supporting, listening, mirroring in those, and attending in certain way to the processes of my friends, of my family. And also it felt a little bit overwhelming at that moment, and I wanted to go beyond, and I felt a call to understand how those individual processes interact, dance, and evolve in a greater setting, in the setting of the collective, and the social setting, and in the community setting. And my first experiences were traveling to different places and working as a volunteer for working. I worked in Angola, in Africa as a volunteer psychologist. Then observing, studying the social dynamics and seeing how to bring them into a new cohesion, working in the favelas in Brazil, mainly in Rio de Janeiro, working with the children and with the elders. Afterwards, when the plant medicine was coming into the landscape, obviously huge milestone, and allowing to see different layers of how everything interconnects. I got invited to work and hired as a culture and experience director for one of the biggest digital nomad global hospitality company. In that company, my role was to create blueprints for culture and experience, starting with a why, as Simon Sinek teaches us. What's the why behind the product? What's the why behind what we do? The purpose, and how that influences the experience that the people are living up to, and what is that blueprint of behaviors and emotions that sustains that memory, that needs to be lived up to by the people that work within a company, and the people that are the clients, or the ones that consume the product or the service of that company as well. That added another of a contemporary tools and angles of understanding, very much connected to that psychology and to my passion of working with the community, that later on was applied to the building of IMAGO, to building of the IMAGO community, which in its word itself, IMAGO, is the moment of the breakthrough, of the caterpillar that went into that pupa, that chrysalis stage, and is ready to come into a stage of its full expression, spread its wings as a butterfly. Imago is also the I am Mago, I am the Magi, I am the magician, bringing again that remembrance of the magic that we reflect and we carry within in all the interconnectedness. And that has been something that has sustained the present moment of the community and our work as the essence. What's the why? Our mission, our vision, the experience, the behaviors that interweave us and that sustain us, and that many of the studies nowadays confirm already. There's amazing quantitative and qualitative studies that I'm happy to send you some references to as well, that show and defend the social efficacy, as they call it, within the integration of psychedelic and transformative experiences. Yeah, it's this possibility of being once again in this current, and this awareness of the living body of the Aliu Pohpo that supports us to settle and bring our insights into the daily life, to bring this beautiful mandalas and downloads of codes, geometries that go beyond what we perceive as human, into more universal understanding, and eventually, as one of the grandmothers would say, remind us that the most important thing in life is to remember to wash the dishes, which is a powerful reminder that the path of spiritual awareness and expansion teaches us, like when we come into this humbleness of simplicity within the complexity of spiritual learning.
It reminded me the other day I saw a video. I come from the US, so I that's obviously a big part of my cosmovision, and Um, but soon we have an election coming up, and I was watching a video of a guy. I'm sure most listeners will know him. His name is Robert Kennedy Jr. He comes from the Kennedy family, a very well known family, and I like him very much. I don't agree with all of his policies, but I think at his heart he's a very good person, and someone who's been, I think, in some very dark places himself. And I think I have a lot of respect for, I think, for anyone who's able to bring themselves out of those places. But in this beautiful video, it was a very short video, but his wife a number of years ago committed suicide, and so he was the sole caretaker of his children. I can't remember exactly how many he had, but he had a few children, and I think they were teenagers or maybe even older at that point. But he said all of them handled it quite well. However well one can handle that. But he said one was still, he felt struggling, and it was actually the child that he described as having this kind of warrior energy. And he was quite worried about this child. And eventually this child found himself somewhere working with ayahuasca. And Robert Kennedy describes his son's journey, which is obviously a bit challenging in and of itself, but the way he described it is, it was very beautiful, and because I'm sure, as we'll get into, I think that there's so many ways that these plants can be worked with, and so many different portals that we can begin to enter, but he described that he was like going from dimension to dimension, and in every new dimension that he would enter, like an aspect of that relationship with his mother was healed, and he found forgiveness and gratitude, and it was this incredibly profound experience for him. And Robert Kennedy, when this ordeal was done, he said his kid came home to him, and he could see that something very profound had shifted. And he noticed the first thing, beyond just obviously the physical change or the energetic change that he could feel, is he said for the first time, his child just started doing the dishes, and he knew something very dramatic had changed. So you had mentioned you found yourself in Panama, and from the bit I know about you, it seems like you began working, and you had mentioned this plant ayahuasca before, and it seems like you've worked with a number of traditions, from Santo Daime to the Huni Queen, the Yawanawa. I think you were in Colombia, maybe the Shuar in Ecuador. Again, it's obviously a huge topic, but can you maybe take us a bit on that journey of maybe what led you to working with a plant like ayahuasca, and kind of what that journey was like, and how that unfolded as you began finding these different kind of diasporate indigenous groups who were working with that?
Hmm. Well, all the fabric is coming together in a very, very beautiful way. Yeah, with this story of the son of Kennedy, and also the previous mention that you made about the dreams, and about the similarity of the dream experiences, in parallel to this psychedelic experience. So while we ingest substances and plants, there's a very important thread for the humanity that connects these two, and connects one of the most poetic and most dramatic aspect, and the biggest why of the existence, the biggest why of the human life. And the biggest why of the human life is like why are we brought into this existence, and why do we die, is that fear of the death that starts to arrive as soon as the consciousness develops, is that fear that the parents feel for their child before the child fear itself. And then the moment that is inevitable is once again this bringing back Jean-Paul Sartre, this existential angst, this existential anxiety of we want to be free, and when we realize that we're free, we are afraid of this freedom. One of my favorite reads, which is the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, reflects about how the lack of the relationship of the human being with the concept of death is what creates all the dizziness and all the confusion in the world. Why? Because of the lack of the relationship with the death, and doesn't allow us to relate with the life in a good way. And that's why we consume everything every day as if there was no tomorrow, and we cannot tap into going beyond ourselves and to the generational prayer, finding true realization and planting a tree which fruits we won't be able to harvest, yet will come for the children, maybe of our children. And ayahuasca, translated from the Quechua, being the vine of the dead, or the vine of the death. The death gives us this opportunity to experience this death, to come into relationship with it ourselves, knowing what that ego death that happens, that initially within certain form of ignorance, of unknown, feels for us like how many times people in the ceremony say, I feel I'm dying, I'm dying. It's so scary. And then when finally they cross that gate, they dissolve into the oneness with everything, and once again to being one with it all. The ayahuasca and the teachings of the elders is the one that opens the path, that cleanses and allows us to take away this first veil of illusion. And then other tools of wisdom, like guachuma, peyote comb, to start ordering and bringing the memories. There is more to say about that, but let's keep it at this at this moment. And so this experience of living and dying, and as we again start to perceive it, not only in the ego death that can happen in a very profound meditation or other spiritual experiences, the rebirth breathworks, holotropic breathworks, or the ayahuasca experience, the work with different sorts of high condensation DMT containing tools of wisdom. The dream and the moment of the night is also a reflection of that. We come into the moment of our dreams, and in a certain way we die to be reborn the next day. We come into this awareness of navigating life beyond death, and to experiment, to live in other dimensions. The different elders that I worked with, that I dieted with, they speak of even building, constructing the whole lives, families, having relationships within the dream realms, and that they connect to also through the work of their diets, as we know, and everybody that watches your and studies with your podcast and your offering here knows that the dreams are one of the most important of the vessels and foundations of the study on this path. Therefore, bringing it to your most recent question, I had heard about ayahuasca already for a few years before I actually heard the strong calling that now it's the moment. Now it's the moment to see beyond what I was able to see, to go beyond the attachments of certain patterns that I was living within at that moment of my life that were expressing themselves, and difficulties with forgiveness, difficulties with within that DJ stage of my life that was related to, I would say, unaware, unconscious use of substances, the sexuality, and so on and so forth. When I heard that call, I spoke to one of my friends from the festival scene, and she connected me with an elder, which who brought the divine as one of the first one to the territory that I was living at that moment. And at the first night, we united in a very small, intimate circle at a tiny Santo Daime church, and we sang and we danced. The experience, as many could probably relate with their first ceremony, was very powerful and allowed me to see, experience, reflect upon many things. Yet one of the most powerful realizations for me was easing into certain compassion with myself and with all of my relations, and just this profound forgiveness, this comprehension of that everything that surrounds us is part of it all, and has a reason to exist, and there's no reason to hang into or keep grasping any anger or any remorse, any limiting belief that doesn't allow things and the waters of our existence to flow. Soon after, to the same place came a taita from the Kamtsa tradition, from the Kamtsa nation of Putumayo, of the Colombian Amazon, and I got to know Jahe, which was the initial part of my training, of my learning, where I felt that call to become a guardian. Those ceremonies were extremely powerful, extremely scary, yeah, and yet that was all I knew at that moment. I knew that there was a perspective on a very structured, syncretic approach of a discipline of Santo Daime that brought great insight of what the geometry of a ritual can be, yeah, and also what that showed me how symbols and archetypes can be used to call in certain realizations and transformations beyond the dogma of a specific religion. They can be universal. You can speak of Mary Magdalene, Saint Mary. You can speak of Isis or Dama de Cao, and they represent the very similar energy of the liberated feminine, of the force of the feminine that is not only external to you, but it's internal within the masculine that we carry. The Jahe taught me how to surrender and know how to embrace very powerful, strong, turbulent ayahuasca processes. Then there was something that I felt missing, something that wasn't that present in that tradition of Jahe. Yes, there was singing. People would gather at the end and celebrate, and this more extended, broader perception of medicine music. There was powerful prayers, certain chants, more like conjures, conjuros. Yet I felt I wanted to sing. And my first connection happened at a beautiful center a temple land of that's called Akasha in the more or less hour and a half away from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, led by the so-called guardians of the Huni Queen that were responsible a few decades ago for bringing the first indigenous out of the Brazilian Amazon to the cities and to the urban context. And just to the people to experience the force of the of ayahuasca, because as we know, Santo Daime was responsible for spreading of that first awareness of that tool, yet in a different way among Brazil. And nowadays, probably it's the most common way that ayahuasca is consecrated around the world. So my first experiences and my first inspiration and first chants that I've learned were with the Huni Queen. Yet soon after, I had an opportunity to meet the Yawanawa. The Yawanawa that were bringing this very high frequency of joy, very high frequency of healing through happiness, through dance, very distinct to the work of the Jaheceros, and also different to the way that the Shipibo work. Also a very profound and one of the, in my opinion, one of the most complex, like if we dare to compare indigenous and ayahuasca cosmovisions and technologies, and how to enchant that serpent of energy, and how to work with the library of knowledge that goes beyond the uni, this sacred brew itself, how to bring the force of the animals and the plants, this whole library, as your allies through the diets. And so I was criticized many times by like, oh, Miow, you should find one teacher and one elder to follow. Like this is overly polyamorous, like you shouldn't be doing that. And yet most of the people that were criticizing me for that were white people. Just with all respect, I give thanks to all of them. They kept me always very, very humble, and I was always in consideration of that. Yet the indigenous themselves were always supporting me. They said, like, don't syncretize, give space to each thing, and don't overlap, don't mix up. However, you can complement. As we say, the new people have the power of discerning among the ocean, the sea of different proposals, and from there, as the Tubos say, extract the honey, the sweetest motherly milk, which needs to be done with a lot of care, obviously. We live in the times and we cannot avoid that. We live in the times, we cannot avoid, and we cannot neglect the topic of cultural appropriation, which is a huge basket, like of what it means nowadays when this tools of wisdom and baskets of knowledge are open for the study of the Westerners and the people that are coming in, and also the indigenous coming out of the jungle, out of the mountains to share that knowledge with us. So it is very delicate. I'm not saying that this is the right path. This is the path that I strongly felt called to, as while studying with different teachers that work with same but different brew, with the ayahuasca, with different names that carry different codes, different ways of relating to it. I realized that some of them had specific tools and specific approaches, ways of working with it, that were providing an opportunity to sustain one sort of process and one sort of need within the new humanity and its demand in comparison to the others. the depth of the work of the Shipibo Ikaros, this surgery or operation that you come into dancing with the specific transmission of the Ikaro, and how you can get into the field, into the individual, into the reading of the space is extremely unique. From the other side, the work that the Yawanawa bring as the collective, giving an opportunity for the social efficacy and mirroring, and for everybody to sing together, to be this choir in certain similar way as Santo Daime does it, brings a new form of a possibility of resonance in which, in that, again, high frequency of healing energy, everybody come into resonance, and they mirror themselves, and they know they're not on their own. They know that we are together, we are interdependent, and we can sustain each other, and they got me, I got them. Yeah, it's big, much more than these simple words express. And then on top of that, the Andean cosmovision and the stories of the region, both of the Andes and of the Amazon, gave more a context that translated within an attempt of those bridge people, like one of my teachers, Alejandro Tucuyapa, also Amika, an incredible teacher and a bridge person of the ancestral wisdom into the new time. They support the integration of that wisdom and that knowledge and translation into the daily life, and washing the dishes once again for the people of the Western mind. Eventually, there's conjures, there's chants, collective, individuals, there's Ikaros, there's stories. Yet we need to be careful while we collect this knowledge, also to know like what is that truly serves and what we receive from it as this essence for our daily life. And one thing that we can, and there's more of them, but one thing that we can identify among all of the ayahuasca traditions, and then basically within all of the expressions of the transformational healing paths, whether of the east, north, of the south, is that coming into the discipline and diligence of the dance of that mind and that heart, of how to tame our thought. Yeah? And that we speak about in the Shipibo tradition, we speak about Shina. Yeah. Similarly, in the Yawanawas speak about the Shina. Yeah, which actually their languages are similar. They are both coming from the Pano branch, and they speak about the essential importance of beautifying, straightening, aligning of our thought, being present with it, and also bringing it as to serve us, not it to serve, not us to serve and follow our thought, but for our thought to be an ally to our heart. Also, all of these cultures, and then we expand to other tools of knowledge as well. They speak about Sumak Kausai, about the good living, and about the beautiful thought, pensar bonito. So we have the Quechua, and we have the pensar bonito, as the people of the Colombian Amazon say, and also the Shinan Sharakapa, as the indigenous of the Brazilian Amazon speak of the strong thought, joyful thought. They say "so alegria," only joy. And I know, and I saw people many times coming to the Yawanawa ceremony, for example, like or to the Huni Queens, like, why all the time? Only joy. It's not only joy all the time. But what does it mean? What's behind that simplicity? Is it like exaggerated optimism, or maybe it's something of an approach. Yeah, it's not conditional happiness that we're speaking about, like that I'm happy because something is or something is not. Yeah, there's an equanimity within that only joy calling, within that beautiful thought. It means we are going into a very profound trust that there's no leaf that moves, that shakes with the force of the wind without the will of the Great Spirit. And whatever comes, whether the times are good or tough, we trust and we approach it with this vote of joy that, okay, this is life. Yeah, as people here in the territory of Costa Rica say, pura vida, pure life. Yeah, there's a key, there's a clue on how to live and not get overwhelmed and tangled in our life, and also bring up weaving that with what a few threads before, what we were speaking about, the medicine approach towards healing, and many times as it being a tool of combat with illness. Yeah, and that refers to an alternative approach that has been created and born in psychology, which is positive psychology, on how to tend to what is good and what is positive, and from there expand instead of focusing on the negative. So we're coming a lot into this philosophy and existential talk here, yet eventually what I discovered among all of those teachings, and obviously there's part of the complex technology of what all of them teach, different involvement with the medicine geometry, and also social dynamics. Yeah, like there's part that we can see among Shipibos and, for example, Juarez, much more let's say clear and sometimes even exaggerated, which is this let's call it magical, witchcraft elements, those protections, attacks that are happening, that are not mentioned that much, or kept more in secret when you're amongst the Brazilian Amazon. Yet eventually, all of this, first of all, in our first territory and the territory of the domain of our mind, they teach us to think beautifully, to think joyfully, to be simple, to work, and that always. I was born in a Christian family. I probably, like many stories are very similar to that. I went to a moment of atheism, being agnostic, and then realizing the power of the faith and my relating with the spiritual and the magic beyond a specific concept. Yet also on the Christian path there, and within the Catholic context, there were some people with very special word, and there's a famous writing by John Paul II, who was Polish, which is Laborem Exercens, speaking about the power and the force of the work. Yeah, and the work is one of the ways in which we sustain and keep ourselves centered and well ingrained, well settled. Whenever we go and we meet, we gather with our communities, we always work. Yeah, and when we work together, we call it mingar. Yeah, and that keeps us sane. That also brings me back to the very first teaching that I received from the elder that served me the first cup of daime, my first cup of ayahuasca, and he said, like, remember, son, feet on the ground, head in the sky. Always feet on the ground, and then your head in the sky.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah, there's a lot there. One of the things that came up, this idea of like só alegria, this idea of focusing on that, I think that's really invaluable. And I I often work with prayers, and One of the prayers I work with is this North Native American prayer, and it speaks about being grateful for the past. And it says specifically for its lessons and its joys. And even though it's something very simple, it all, even from a young age, like it really struck me because it wasn't saying like, ruminate on the past or, look at the bad things people did to you, which are all there, which is, I think, what you were alluding to. But he was very specifically saying, like, learn from the lessons, like that even these bad things could be seen as lessons,
Mm-hmm.
and to always remember the joys and to focus on that. Um, and I think sometimes also with this more psychological way in which some of these plants like ayahuasca are being worked with, it could be argued that it's falling under the domain, into maybe the territory, we could use this word, of a more Western psychological view, which tends to focus more so on the past and the traumas. And even the way we think about these plants in a more modern context, it's often very specifically used for trauma. I mean, even there's now like whole fields of like, trauma-informed therapy. And again, there's something very powerful about that. There's something very beautiful about that. Um, but I think sometimes that idea of like sa alegria can be missing in that because, we were also talking about the mind, where we focus the mind. And that's a very powerful tool of a lot of these practices is where am I placing my intention? It's even this balance of like the archetypal masculine and feminine. It's something that came up a lot working with ayahuasca is and again, from our rational mind, we often want someone to tell us like, what do I need to do? And often I found what a lot of people would focus on is this idea of surrender, to just let the, ayahuasca or the medicine to do what it does and just to kind of lay back to the best of your ability and to allow it to happen. But I often found it fascinating because a lot of the indigenous people who I were working with would also speak of this idea of like dominar, like you also needed to play your part. You needed to sit up. You needed to focus. You needed to meet the medicine. You needed to recognize the kind of quote unquote bad and to work with that, to take it out, to fill yourself with the beauty and to go in and begin to move this. And I think for me, that was the more archetypal kind of masculine. And so it was always this dance between surrender, between letting go, but also sitting up, working, focusing, doing our part. So I think that's very fascinating what you were talking about. One of the really interesting things, and I think it's a really interesting topic, which I think comes up a lot for people, and I'd be curious maybe if you can speak a bit more about that. But as you said, in some of these Amazonian traditions and traditions that maybe more and more people are familiar with, like the Shipibo, and many, the Ashaninka, many mestizo traditions, as you said, they do focus on this idea of light and dark and this aspect of battling, of warring, that often even illness is not necessarily something that only resides within ourself, but there's a causal relationship to it. And often that causal relationship is coming from something from the outside or someone from the outside. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, it's a huge topic, but I think there's a lot of confusion around that. And a lot of different ways that can be looked at. So, and again, I know some of these are big questions, but from your experience, can you maybe speak a bit about what you've seen? Maybe they're alluding to, and from your perspective, what can be seen when those things are brought up? Because I think it's also something that for many Westerners, or maybe people who are new coming to these medicines, it's a topic that's a bit uncomfortable because it maybe doesn't nicely fit into a worldview that they may think that they're going into.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. So one thing that I remember in the first moment when I think about it is one of my dear friends from the beginning of my path that told me, Miow, if you don't mess up or don't mess around with the energy won't mess around with you. But as soon as you start to get involved with it, then the relation always comes into reciprocity. There's different approaches in which we can relate with the energy. Yeah? Energy in general, we can call it magic. You can talk about, there's a big questions, like, are there other spirits? Or is there just one spirit? Yeah. Or maybe some would call them just other energies. Are there good energies and bad energies that want to hurt? Some of the teachers teach us that no, there's just energies that are out of their place, out of their order, nor where they correspond. And when they appear, all we need to do is just greet them, show them their place. If they need, nourish them with some food so they don't need to eat from our plate, and then dispatch them. From what I understood is, and I learned seeing many of the healings made by powerful pages, shamans, healers of different sorts, is that eventually, no matter how powerful you are, if the person in front of you that is to receive the healing is not available and in this position to receive it, to support it, to be part of it, most of the times it will just go like water on a rubber duck. It won't affect that person, which doesn't mean that also within what the quantum physics teach us, the power and the domain of our thought, of our emotion, doesn't influence the energy around us and in front of us. Yet when we are all coming into resonance once again, and we believe in it, then we can change the reality on a different level. And those studies show, like there were studies about like conflict zones and people meditating them, and the conflict reducing, and so on and so forth. So once again, when we speak about this, there's paradoxes, but doesn't mean that it's not coherent still. Now, when we speak about the shamanic work, not only with the medicine, but any sort of work with the magic, and call it white magic, black magic, as soon as you get involved with it and you start using it, you start to make those movements that in one culture, it might be lighting a candle and leaving some food next to it at the altar. In other place, it might be cleaning somebody with raw eggs, just to clean their energy. I personally, and like that's my personal experience and opinion, I see all of these as just different ways to bend and take advantage of the matter and the space and the world, the dream as we agreed to around, to communicate with those realms. Yeah. It's not very different to have a powerful dream and heal and transform from it than drink a cup of ayahuasca or sit in front of a mountain meditating 8 hours per day for multiple weeks and have also this profound transformation. So there's different ways, different technologies, different movements, different protocols, different rituals that can serve the same purpose. And in the same way, we continue to be humans, and we continue to be territorial. We continue to be in this dizziness of the relations of power. And in some cultures that's more prevalent, and in some idiosyncrasies and some not. And there's situations in people that people use the force, and the stories of the indigenous say that the force of ayahuasca, the force of the moon, of the woman, the women's blood. Although, as in this specific example, by the Northern American native culture is taught like that the blood of the women should be offered to the land in order to give back that blood to the earth, to the soil, so the wars don't need to happen. In other indigenous cultures, there are stories of that blood being used to fight against the other people of power, other shamans. So in order not to overcomplicate this reflection, people fight for power. People fight for their position. They compare, they judge, and they want to be stronger. And unfortunately, the fact that you are a spiritual person, which is a huge topic that we could just be speaking about, what does it mean to be spiritual? Yeah. Whenever I hear the word spiritual, I remember my first Burning Man and a sticker of Justin Bieber in one of the porta potties saying, "I'm spiritual," and it just stuck with me. Like, okay, what does it mean? What does it mean to any person? What does it mean that a person can drink ayahuasca for decades and heal thousands of people, do so much goodness, and in the end, they can still get dizzy with their power and come up to different sorts of abuse? That's a remembrance of that humbleness, that we continue to be human beings, and within that human factor, we are free, and in this freedom, we can get corrupted by greed, by desires, by fear. And the fact that you are a shaman, that you've been working with plant medicine for so many years, the fact that you are indigenous or not, unfortunately doesn't mean that you are enlightened, that you are a 100% good person that I can trust. You're still a human being. And within my path, I've met and seen and learned with many people that were getting involved in different sorts of magical witchy dynamics, protecting themselves or being in constant wars that were going beyond their individual simple desire, but more related to their lineage. The Shuar people, for example. I mean, it's not a lie. They're known as warriors. That's how they carried themselves for millennia. There's this genetical blood memory that remembers and needs to be acknowledged. Me being Polish and having all these wars behind me. I mean, I like to say it doesn't condition and define who I am, but definitely it influences and affects strongly the way I receive and process information on my day by day, the way I learn to relate with my partner, for example, that is from the north. That makes a big difference. So if you were to ask me like what about that? I I think it's very important for you to be aware and know what you want to be involved in. And I personally choose not to get involved into fights and these sort of relations of power. I choose humbleness and choose to focus on what I can give to the world beyond protecting myself from something evil. In the same way, going out of the Amazon and the witchy things, I trust, although many conspiration theories might make sense, I choose not to feed them and myself with them too much. I just to trust that that we have an opportunity to awaken a consciousness of care, a new ancestral collective awareness. So all refers to the story that you want to weave, which is the perception. You change your life by changing your mind, by changing your perception, by the story you weave. You see the cup half full or half empty. It's as simple as that. And you decide on the dream that you're weaving in front of you. Yeah, and there's like whenever I feel a little bit lower, I like to read a little bit of the Toltec wisdom, because it embraces the darkness, yes, yet at the same time it brings this positive, distant, observatory approach. And in the ceremonies we always invite people, you are the actor, and you can choose at any moment to be the observer. And at any moment, you can also choose to be the observer of the observer and dance in between all of those seats. The darkness is essential to understand what light is. We cannot savor the sweetness without knowing the bitterness. The pain teaches us to appreciate the joy, the pleasure. And in order to embrace the complete spectrum of the human existence, as one wise person said, if God wanted us, spirit, universe, nature wanted us to live in complete joy, completely enlightened all the time, we would probably be born on cloud 9. Yet for some reason in this human existence, we are born into the complete spectrum of life, into that theater of life, into that dizziness, so that we can make a choice and choose which mouth of the wolf we want to choose to feed at any moment, every day when we wake up, every time when our limiting beliefs, any reductive thought, any shame, any blame, any judgment appears, we can choose which direction we want to go. And that's where the dance of the spiritual path and all those tools comes into how we tend to the neuroplasticity of our existence, how we change our mind. Yeah, pretty good book also for the ones that want to start embracing those realms, yeah, that got really popular. So I personally choose not to get involved in those witchy realms, which doesn't mean that I don't work with magic. Yet I choose very well the tools, the moments, and I consult always what and where I offer those sorts of energies and how I dance with them. That's why it's very important that we learn about what the ancestral wisdom and millenary traditions bring to us. It's taking a very strong LSD can be more impactful than drinking 20 times ayahuasca for a specific person. Hitting the rock bottom with an overdose of, or something close to an overdose of cocaine might be enlightening for one person. Another person can just be spinning in the circles, going to the ceremonies, however, not doing the homework. So eventually it all depends on us and how we choose to work with the awareness and with the reverence, with the respect, with the discipline, and with the diligence, with the opportunities that we receive. All of those things open different gates of possibilities, opportunities, yet also open gates that we might not be ready to sustain, to integrate. That's why, especially in the modern world, which is that extremely saturated with the information, with the emotion, where we lost the connection with the cycles of life and harmonizing ourselves with the nature, all those fake news, not knowing whether a war is happening, who is attacking, whether there's a virus or there's really not a virus, we forget how to come to our center and trust our gut, trust our internal clock, our internal calendar, our internal voice that is the same reflection when well attuned of the voice of the universal consciousness. And as Eckhart Tolle says, all we need to do, let's not overcomplicate it, all we need to do is just open a little space in between two thoughts so that that awareness, that consciousness can arise. So long story short, or TLDR, consult not only with your teachers, yet within yourself, with that inner wisdom, like what corresponds for you to do. There's no rush. There's no need to consume and do more and to go farther and to get into the fights. That's your story that you choose to weave.
So one of the things we spoke about this a little before we started is we share one of the same teachers whose name or title is Amika, and I've also observed. I think a lot of your language has been very influenced by him, as you know, his teachings have had a very profound impact on me as well, and these ideas of weaving and the power of the word, codes or healing codes, the story, and all of these things are so complex, and I think it's, you know, I think there's a real wisdom in even taking pause before we speak, because, you know, all of these things that there's so many different levels that we can approach things from. And you know, I think we've been speaking very highly of indigenous people and, you know, the power, the traditions, but also, as you said, you know, even that word is so very limited, and things aren't always black and white. And I remember the first time, I believe it was the first time, or maybe it was the second time. Maybe it was the second time, actually, I sat with Amika. It was like for a week, and we had actually invited the Shipibo people to join, and it was very fascinating to me because in the end, not a single one joined, not one, and again, that, you know, that's why these things are so complex, and there can be a multitude of reasons why that didn't happen. But it was also very, very interesting to me, and that many dynamics are still very present in the world, and you know, even a bit to what you were speaking about of how we view the world, and these ideas of who we are and what is threatened by that sense. For me, Amika was very, very fascinating, because I also felt like in my own journey, it was because he uses this kind of phrase a lot, these códigos de sanación, these healing codes, and I felt like his entire teaching was a healing code. And something that was, I felt, very complementary, and also something that perhaps I felt was maybe missing for me in certain paths that I had been on. And a big part of that I felt was the power of the story, the power of the word, the power of sitting in a space and sharing and being able to be vulnerable and and to see the humanity of people while at the same time going into potentially very difficult things. And also this recognition that in a way everything is medicine. And one of the things that was very powerful. I mean, I think you're working with Mambe right now. Mambe, I'm working with tobacco, with Ambil. These are some of the fundamental kind of pillars that Amika speaks about, and kind of the story, which I also find so fascinating. And it's one of the things I think that links a lot of these things together. Even this idea that Amika speaks about, the kind of in eons ago that humanity was suffering, and these beings from the star system Sirius heeded that call of suffering, and they transcended the 12 dimensions of time and space on this primordial Anaconda canoe, and on this canoe they brought all these various medicines. Which is fascinating because the Shipibo say, you often hear in their cosmology, their cosmovision, that their ancestors came from Sirius. You see that in the Dogon people of Mali. There's references in Egypt, in Sumer. I mean, it's a very fascinating thing, which I think also lends, I think, a certain credence to, because you use this word, this science, this technology, and that it's actually something very, very ancient that we're maybe from the outside just beginning to remember, to find these tools that are helping us to reconnect to that. But maybe if you can speak of again, these are kind of ambiguous questions, but maybe for you, what meeting someone like Amika meant for you, what that tradition, the tubu, what that meant for you, what maybe things you learned from that power of the word, of the story, of weaving things together, of having respect for different medicines, because that was also something you alluded to, that you said, like, maybe you touch on, is, we started with ayahuasca, which is obviously very well known right now, but I think you very rightfully said that that's a tool. It's one in this kind of cosmovision of the tubu. It's one of many plants. It's one of the queens of knowledge. And there's other plants that you said, like you were saying, if I get this right, that for you, like ayahuasca was something that can open us to certain maybe portals that begin to open the door that allows us to see. It can often be said in that way. But then there's also these other plants that have their purpose, that have their story, that have their initiation, their way of teaching, like peyote or wachuman, that in this kind of canoe, every one of these medicines is given respect. And I think something for me that I think has really stuck with that is really this idea about remembering the story. And I think there's something that's so powerful, that even though it's such a simple thing, but for me, it's really about, whenever we work with these plants or a tradition, it's really remembering. I think there's something so powerful in that, of just remembering the story, remembering the story not only of the plants but our own story, our own ancestors. I think there's something very, very powerful and something where we can really get lost in a way when we begin to forget those stories, because there are, as he says, healing codes built into those. I mean, this may sound a little crazy to people who are listening, and it could be a figment of my imagination. I think also maybe the older I get, or the more I do this work, the lines between the past, the present, my dream space, my waking space, it becomes finer and finer. But my memory of one time sitting with Amika, it felt like the entire room got very, very blurry, and his entire focus began to shift on me. And I don't think this could have happened because there was many other people in the room, and I'm sure he was also talking to them and making eye contact with them. But all I remember is his eye contact focused on me for what seemed like, I don't know, a long time. And even though I think in that moment something about my own consciousness began to fade out, or attune to something rather than the literal meanings of the word, and it felt very much like something was downloaded to me. And even to this day, I can't necessarily put my finger on it, but it was one of the more profound experiences I've had. And it wasn't necessarily even on such a strong plant of something like ayahuasca. We were working with mambe, we were working with ambil, which certainly are very powerful in their own right, but maybe not powerful in the way that some people may look at these power plants. But a healing code, I hate to use the word. I began to understand what that means, but I began to have a glimpse of what he was speaking about, and so there's been a very powerful, I think, teaching that's happened in subsequent times, sitting with him, going through some quite intense and beautiful situations, not only with myself, but in that circle, in that healing space. So it's been very profound for me. So I find it fascinating that you also have sat with him, and that he's had an impact on your life, and not only him as a human being, but those stories, that tradition that he's taken upon him to carry.
Hey. Well, first of all, honoring in this way Amika as a teacher, as a friend, and all the proposal of the Tubu nation that's behind him. The one that he refers to as a proposal, something that is simply a proposal. So it actually cannot be grasped or petrified, and in this way cannot be lost. And giving thanks for everything that he inspired on my path, and also the others that studied with him, and his lineage, his family. And that said, it's important to emphasize that I am not one to dare and entrusted to share the Tubu teachings and the depth of their wisdom. Yet definitely I can bring out some references that are very coherent with what we've been reading about, and also what you've been reflecting and contemplating in the words you have just shared. And one of the things this you mentioned was this fine line, and the Tubu, they teach us that the line that separates the healing from the madness is as fine as the layer of the bag that embraces the amniotic fluid of a pregnant mother. It's very thin, yeah? And with this fineness, we need to walk it. And in the same way, working with any of the tools of wisdom, we shall remember about that this line is there. Yeah? We can be on the side of the healing and on the side of the madness very easily. The Tubu, in comparison to some other cultures, they are known for working with different tools of wisdom, not mixing them, yet complementing. And that has been one of the big revolutions in my understanding and approach towards that, comprehending that they are not to be overlapped, mixed, or syncretized. They're saved, serve their purpose. They have their space, their time, yet only in a complementary way. that are still honored. In some other cultures, other traditions, there's only one plant or two plants or different moments in the year that they correspond. And just to be clear, the Tubu also they work with the calendar, they work with the cycles of natures, and there are specific plants, specific tools that they work in different moments of the year. So there is an essential important order. As you said, the Tubu, one of the most powerful of the tools that they bring is the tool of the word. And as our young elder Tukuyapa says, the word creates the world. And we said before, all your reality is defined by the story you tell. Each of those tools, in order to be worked with, danced with in the right way, they come with their foundation, and their foundation is their symbol, their story, their song, and their dance. In this way, whenever you ask a question and to the Tubu elder, normally the question needs to be asked within the right container, which is the container of the mambiadero, where the presence of the arrow, of the tobacco in form of ambil is present, and the sweetness of the mother in form of mambe. And when you ask a question, many times they ask you like, are you ready? Do you want to hear the story? And that's a very important, crucial moment of a responsibility and accountability, because the story that you hear cannot be unheard, and it brings a new way, responsibility, diligence, and discipline to relate with that story, to dare that if you already lived that situation that the metaphors brought about in your life, to integrate it, or if you haven't lived it, you might need to be ready for that story to appear and to manifest itself in your life in a certain way. In that way, every tool of knowledge, whether it's Moru, cannabis, whether it's datura or borrachero, the angel's trumpet, mambe, ambil, ayahuasca, they all have their story, their symbol, their song, and their dance. And in that way, in a reverent way, they can be integrated and tended to with the right protocol, within the right ritual that includes the preparation, the dance with it, and also the diet. The diets are very important, and the diets, we're speaking about the diets not at this moment in the perspective of the diet as the study with a specific plant or spirit. I mean, it's still a study, yet more as a space, an offering, a surrender, a delivery that you give to honor the container of the work with a specific tool. And these might be different in different traditions. In one place, they might tell you 3 days before and 3 days after, abstain from sexual relations, from sexual intercourse, from alcohol, meat, and so on and so on. And in the others, it's just the 3 days after. In specific sort of work, it might change again. Yet, it's important that as soon as you know, as soon as you heard the story, as soon as you dared to ask and offered yourself to listen, at least that's what I integrated and understood from the study and from the Tubu people, and also from my teachers who also studied with them. You need to be ready to live that story, to live up to it, and also to experience. And the stories are there's beautiful stories, inverted commas, easier stories, and there's stories that are extremely dense, and they're present in different indigenous cultures that bring very profound teachings. Yet also they might shake up our lives very profoundly and change everything. The medicines of Mambe and Ambil are one of the tools that are spreading around the world most intensively right now. You travel to many different places around the world, and you can see more and more people having their jars, working with them, yet not many people yet knowing about the technology of what Mambiadero is, what the weaving of the world is, of the word is, and of the world through the word. For example, as I learned from about Mambe, there's many very important rules, which include not lying, not gossiping, not judging, not using the names of the other people that we refer to, especially when we bring certain stronger stories, and that although superficially they might seem a little bit lighter, there are the most powerful medicines that embrace all of the worlds and all of the dimensions of work, and that the echo, call it karma, or the effect of being neglecting that protocol with Mambe can return to you 40 years after, that you won't even remember, like, what did I do? Why is this happening to me? Yeah, okay, I lied, I was gossiping. So we live in the world of many proposals, and as we said, the Tubu say that the new people, the Dirwamasa, they are born with the capacity, with the discernment of how to extract that essence, that sweet motherly milk within the huge ocean and dizziness of proposals. And it's very important to know that whatever we relate to, how simple it might look, as soon as we learn, and one of the most powerful medicines that the Tubu use, for example, which is one of the most prostituted or bastardized of the tools of wisdom, the Queen of Wisdom, Santa Maria, cannabis, ganja, weed, many names, Jaimuru, changes completely the caliber of its work and the profoundness. And I personally, on myself and seeing others in the circle, I experienced processes of similar depth with this tool as with ayahuasca, seeing it opened with the right reverence and the right prayer, listening, integrating, and knowing their symbol, their story, their song, and their dance. Within that, there's different paths from which we can discern and we can complement. Yet we need to understand that some of them ask us and demand from us, and that comes in the consultation with our teachers, that we abstain, for example, from the work with other tools and other plants while we are on the path of study with them. That is very straightforward and simple when we are, for example, dieting with the shipibos, and we know we have X amount of months afterwards that we are not to commune with any other tool. Yet there's specific, for example, plants that you can diet with that don't allow you anymore in your life to ingest another plant, and or sort of food, sort of meat. In my Shipibo diets, for example, brought me into a lifetime canceling of communing with any sort of pork derived food. I was just not anymore. Even though in other tradition the pork or the wild boar is something that is part of also of the sacred meat that they consume. Yeah. Yet in a specific moments, and so on and so on and so forth. So yes, it's my word for this is that among all the possibilities and or all the currents of knowledge and possibilities that you can study with, it's important to know what you are choosing and be diligent with it. Not try to grasp too many things at the same time for your safety and for the respect for the tradition. Nowadays, as we were speaking about the word within the Tubu tradition is one of the most powerful tools. Also in other traditions, the song is one of the main tools of the Shipibo people, also of the Yawanawa. And at this moment of easily and highly spreading information and technology, many of the songs, the words and stories are not even being always passed on, but however simply taken and appropriated. And what's more delicate, not in a way of understanding what they're bringing. People sometimes sing chants in the moment of the ceremonies that don't correspond to that moment, that might move energies or open gates that are not to be touched at that moment. A strong ceremony has finished. How many times we probably all experience that, and there's a sharing circle, and somebody brings this extremely powerful cleansing song. It's like everybody starts shaking around, like so. Just to give that example, not judging, not blaming, yet we always have an opportunity to do the things in the right way. And the right way is through asking for permissions, through asking for that story of what and where it comes from. And in this way, be very cautious about how we tend to the internal and external landscape of the energy, protecting ourselves, protecting and safeguarding the ancestral wisdom, and knowing how we bridge it and bringing as the bridge people into the new world that we inhabit.
Yeah, great. One of the things we spoke about a bit before we started, and we kind of alluded to it too, was this idea that you were saying that now fatherhood, being a parent, has been this great medicine. and it's interesting because I almost all of the kind of teachers I've had, the indigenous wisdom keepers, usually have very big families. I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think it's an interesting thing because it was something I noticed early on is a lot of kind of foreigners or Westerners who came often, I think because of some of these like dieta restrictions you were speaking about, one of which is sexual relations, that there was often this kind of misunderstanding that these people who were working with the medicines were kind of like monks in a way, or they were outside of society rather than very much part of society, integrally integrated into society, and all of those different roles that would entail, such as being not only a healer or a wisdom keeper, but a father, a mother, a son, a brother. And it's also, I think, something which is very interesting because I think it's something more and more that I see people struggle with as well, which is that to learn these paths, it takes a tremendous amount of effort. It takes a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of dedication. More and more, I think in culture, we're looking at these quick fixes, biohacks, like shortcuts of things. And, there, from my perspective, there really is no substitute. For example, if you're interested in working with ayahuasca, to sitting in ceremony thousands of times, working with thousands of people to really understand, all of the different things that can come up. Like anything, I do jujitsu. I could read a book about it, I could take a course, but it's thousands of hours spent on the mat, like really training and learning with and from people that makes someone good at jujitsu. And so I think why I'm bringing this up is I think one of the struggles I see with a lot of people is because these paths do require so much time and effort and solitude and restrictions. I think a lot of people struggle with that balance of having a family because it's often seen that having a family is somehow a burden or taking away from the time that they could be dieting or learning or doing ceremony. And yet something interesting that you were speaking about was that, for yourself, you found being a father, being a parent to be maybe one of the strongest medicines. So is that something maybe you can share a bit about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for bringing that reflection about this desire for instant gratification and quick fixes that the humanity has learned to look for. This, I call it the Amazon return policy reality, in which I like or I don't like, I return and change, and difficulty to commit within certain patience, and also relating with the challenge of the complexity, of the simplicity of life itself. When I was at the beginning of my path, and just to be clear, I continue being on the beginning of my path as I see it. I was reflecting a lot about what many of us heard, that the path of the healer, of the magician, of the shaman is a solitary path. It's a path in which many times you need to let go of all of your relations. You come to be a hermit and be in this profound study in order later to give back to the ones that need it. And once again, there's a paradox, because there's truth in it, that you need to dare to learn, to dare to be with yourself, to learn to love yourself beyond the conditionality of delivering your happiness and your fulfillment in the hands of the ones that love you and the ones that you relate to. Yet also in the advancement of the prophecies and the stories, and as I've been learning from our teachers, the path of the hermit has been coming to a conclusion. The modern groups, as for example Sacred Sons, they teach about the importance of recovering and remembering different rites of passage. Just to give an example, they speak that the time of the lone wolf has ended, and that we need to come into this realization that being alone and good and in good relationship with being alone doesn't mean being lonely, and that as one of the most important ways and paths to learn to tend to life is to re-relate with the calendars of the nature to the we speak of the solar calendar, the lunar calendar, the stellar calendar, and the agroecological calendar that teaches us how the nature moves and how we tend to it, how we observe how things grow, how they rot, how what is happening it reflects our internal reality with external reality as we see the advancement of the process of the seed, the pests, the weeds, and this gardening opportunity that brings the utmost opportunity to learn how to go beyond oneself and us is relating with others. It's really hard to be in a relationship with somebody. It's really hard to live with your own biological family, and it's hard to choose to live with somebody. Yet at the moment when the child comes into the context and you realize, and we reflect about this many times here in the family, when the child is present there, you realize, oh, like, what is my freedom right now? Like, I cannot just decide to disappear for a day, for a week, and sleep and not be in touch, just do my thing. And I remember that when we were calling in our son, and I had all those projections and expectations of how that would be, because I heard also from my teacher, he would say that he was speaking about another friend of his that was going to an elder, and the elder was repeating the same story ever and ever again, the same story. Every time he was going, it was the same story. And that person would say, like, elder, like, I've been coming here so many times, and you're just repeating the same story over and over. What about, is there any other story? And the elder would say, like, well, do you have a family now? No. Well, so you haven't been listening. And there's been this that metaphor that at a certain point, in order for you to truly understand the mystery of the dance of life and the human existence that we are, you need to experience the reality of the family and the care and going beyond yourselves. I believe that moment when we're calling in our son, I believe that, oh, beautiful. So much stress, anxieties with many things in our world, so many worries. When that light comes, I will be just focused on the light of my son, and that will be my whole priority. And other things won't worry. We just be in family. When that light came into the room, it illuminated everything with all that beauty, with all the challenge, that it is to reprogram yourself and give whole attention. And suddenly I realized that, like, oh, by the way, everything that I needed to tend it before is still there, but now I need to change the diapers. And actually the whole light that came into the room and within our family illuminated all the corners and everything under the carpets, and I see all of my imperfections. Strong process. I started to realize that that was the initiation. That was the rite of the passage, to be able to be present there with him, with my family, and at the same time be able to prioritize, yet still be tending to everything that is important, and also on understanding, as we do in the gardening, maybe what seeds are not to be tended at this moment, which seeds belong to be safeguarded, to be let go of, to be put in a box and on standby, or maybe passed on to somebody else. So the family and the children bring a huge medicine of reprioritizing our life, and then showing us how we can become those ninjas or Jedis of our practice, of our study, of our ritualized routine. So that we sit in the morning, we do our rapé, we pray our water, we meditate, and then our son starts running around shouting, but the work still needs to be done. He still needs to be fed. We still need to meditate. Yet we need to learn it in that perspective. It's easy to meditate on the top of a beautiful mountain in Himalayas. It's not that easy to meditate when you're sitting on a bench, and maybe in Central Park it's a little bit easier, depending what energies you are sensitive to. But it's much more difficult to meditate walking through the streets of New York. And the family is what teaches us about going beyond ourselves, and once again about re-relating with the concept of death, as we mentioned it before. Teaches us that what we're doing here is a generational prayer, that we're working and leaving a legacy beyond ourselves, and that the fruits of the trees that we plant will serve for beyond us. We might not even see them. Our children might not see them, yet we trust in this continuity. And in this way, we live eternally. Yeah? My partner, Roxanne, she works with Egyptian mysticism and with Kabbalah. And there's this symbol that looks like a cross with a round bubble vessel on the top, which is called Ankh. And it represents the female reproductive system and this possibility of eternal life, the eternal life that comes from our children through new relationship with the constant cycle of dying and being reborn. So yeah, I feel, at least for my personal path, and I'm relieved, because almost it has been the strongest and definitely the biggest cups of medicine in my life to raise a family, to be in family, to also go beyond the patterns and programs of my idiosyncrasies, my culture, the way I express myself, being a Polish person in relationship with people from other territories. It has given me a greater sense and relief in that it's my responsibility. I'm accountable for it, yet it goes beyond me. And going from that egocentric and then even beyond the ethnocentric perception of like, it's about me, I need to save the world. Maybe the world doesn't need saving, yet it's definitely not for me to do it. However, through the legacy and the seeds that I do my little part to start bringing a little bit of that awareness, a little bit of that caring, it's good to be that ant in a bigger chain of energy and do our part. Such a relief, going beyond that pressure. The elder, the abuelo of Alejo, my teacher, abuelo Rodolfo Greagecudo, he was saying that one of the most important laws of the new time is no more shame, no more blame, no more judgment, no more condemnation, no more condemning. Go beyond that. And one of the first laws of the origin is, and once again we're getting to the same, so alegría, and the profoundness of it is to enjoy. That's what they teach us. We need to enjoy.
So also before we started, you were mentioning you were going into a dieta. could you speak a little bit about that? You don't, whatever you feel comfortable with, whether you want to name the plant or, but what does that mean to you? Why, like, also getting to that question of why, like, why is the dieta, and how do you see of that process? What's happening for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm. The concept of the dieta, um, as in the perspective of the study of and initiations of the Shipibo Sama or the Yawanawa Samakoi, refers to bringing allies and to your spiritual path, and most and foremost, those are the allies that come into work as your team whenever you work with ayahuasca. Yes, yet they are present in your day by day life as well. They bring you songs. They bring you wisdom. They support you in moving the energy, harmonizing it, removing things that don't belong. They support your individual work and also the work when you're in the circle with the medicine. From my experience with the diets, the core experience that I have, I perceive that there's the Shipibo diets are like coming into library of plants and trees, flowers that, as you were already playing a little bit with the Shipibologist, there's also another like game of words that refers to the Shipibo diets, which is like the Chipibo, which Chipibo would be basically the possibility of implanting a chip of wisdom, of knowledge of a specific plant and incorporating it. So those diets, in my perception, work in a certain way through inserting, opening a channel of a prayer and inserting the knowledge, the wisdom, the qualities of a certain spirit of a plant into your existence, which can be, once again, sweetness, harmony, connection, removal of bad energies, and so on and so forth. For that, you need to come into a certain vulnerability. Yeah, I like to compare it to transplanting an organ into a human being body. You need to reduce your immune response in order not to reject it. You need to understimulate yourself so that it can settle and instill in you, so that you can hear its voice, its chant, its wisdom, its reflection, so it becomes one with you, so that it can appear in your dreams. The Yawanawa Samakui approach is slightly, not that much, but slightly different, because they work with different plants, yet it's not such a diversity of the plants themselves that you ingest for the diet. It's more as they serve as a vessel. Yeah, you work with mama, which is the yucca, the cassava. Then you can work with nanu or huito, which is genipapo. It's the plant that that oxidizes and changes the color of your skin. That they paint yourself. The people also use it for protection. And then they have the plant of yuchi, which is the hot chili pepper. Very, very interesting how the Yawanawa relate, and it's also present in some diets with the shipibos, the chili pepper. Although in a normal diet of understimulating yourself, when you prepare for ayahuasca ritual, they say not to use spicy things. The chili pepper itself, using the good intention, can have powerful qualities of reinforcing your diet. And then they have one of the most sacred plants that basically brings a possibility of initiation to a healer, to a page or a shaman, with different specialties and qualities, which they call muka, the sacred root of the dreams. And the Yawanawa, in comparison with the Shipibos, they use mainly those plants. And to be clear, there's certain biodiversity of complementary cultures that fused and complemented with the Yawanawa. So there's new diets present right now. Yet originally those diets and those plants, those tools were used in a way that as a vessel, so that the page, the one that is praying your diet, opening your diet for you, he uses a shumu, which is like a vase, a vessel, and he prays into it, and records into it the prayer, and invites the different spirits that he works with. So that can be the spirit of the serpent, that can be the spirit of the different birds, like Chana, the singing bird, Isku, another one, Vawa, which is the studious one, other birds that imitate the voices and the sounds of everybody else. As one of the most important part of the Yawanawa study is opening your voice and singing. Yawanawas are born, die, live, they joy, cry, mourn, singing at every single moment. Yeah, when you enter a Yawanawa village, it's singing all the time at every single moment. Very, 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 very powerful. So I felt like distinguishing a little bit here, like what are those, like those diets, like in my perception of, and what I've learned and in the traditional way. And in the modern world, and with different possibilities, I have been hearing about things that are called urban diets, for example, diets that can start in the jungle, be finished in your home context, or even started at your home context. They are opened also with the prayer by your maestro and so on and so forth. I don't feel like speaking too much about my personal opinion about that. I definitely wouldn't recommend starting with such a diet on your path, doing this without you having the diligence, discipline, the right container learned in the isolation, and fulfilling a diet in the jungle, as the tradition says. Maybe farther on your path. Yet also beyond the diet itself, there's opportunities as you learn to relate with the plants and with those spirits, to start communing in a good way with different plants in your day by day, to bring those awareness. So you don't necessarily, even in your day by day life, when you're not in the jungle, you don't separate that much that connection and that dance. So it's common that you might reinforce your diet or commune with that plant after you've already done it at your home in the right way. Yet once again, I wouldn't recommend to start with that. Yeah, and what you're asking about is that I mentioned that here in our family, we will open tomorrow one of these studies. Although it will carry all the discipline of a diet, we wouldn't call it a traditional sama. It will be a study. The way we'll commune with a specific flower of a plant, of a tree, of linden, that has properties of harmonization, also, as many of them, it refreshes, opens the voice and brings a song, helps and supports you to re-relate with your emotions. Yeah, I'm yet to learn about this more, so I won't be speaking too much, as just humbly, I don't know that much. Yeah, I got honored by the invitation of Roxanne, of my partner, to commune with that plant and sustain it together in family, which is a very beautiful way of doing the work as well. Yet, as I said, whenever you are in a context different from the jungle, it's much more challenging. There's much more possibility of distraction, many more things that can happen. And that refers to our other question, like, okay, we still have a son. Fortunately, my mother-in-law is visiting us and will support us a little bit, yet like we know that child will be there. So how will we dance with that discipline? Yeah? And that refers once again to everything that you do, not only to such a study, but anything that you commit yourself to on your spiritual path. How to embrace the whole reality, the whole spectrum, the whole theater of life, all the darkness and all the life, and continue walking your I call it routine into the ritual. So I'll definitely will be able to share with you a little bit more when we're done with that. This is the first time I'm daring to do this sort of a study in this container. Just to be clear, we also live in the mountains, in the jungle, so the environment is pretty fortunate for this sort of work. Yet always I do recommend starting with learning how to do things in the most authentic and original container to this sort of training.
Well, amazing, Miow. I think we're starting to come up on almost 3 hours now.
Oh. It has flown beautifully. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, and I think we could easily go another 3. I mean, I think we just touched on the surface of a lot of things. Is there anything in particular we didn't speak about that's on your mind that you'd like to talk about?
I'm feeling that as the elders teach us, especially in the work with these medicines of the word, that before the word cools down, it's good to embrace it and wrap it and sustain it in that high frequency. As my grandfather also taught me, the gentleman always leaves at the peak of the party, and you might deduce why. And with that, I would like to express my profound gratitude for the beautiful work that you're doing. I'm looking forward myself to listening and learning from more of the word that you have woven in other episodes. And if the spirit invites us again, I'm looking forward to weaving more and going deeper into these threads in the future.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Miow. It's been a pleasure, and you conveyed the word beautifully, and I think it really resonates and shows the work that you've done with how you convey what you convey, the energy that you convey it with. So I think it's a real testament to you, to your work, to your life's commitment, and very much thank you for coming on and sharing. I think people really resonate with you, with your word, with what you've shared. If people are interested in maybe reaching out to you or learning more about you, is the IMAGO website a good place, or are there other resources that people can use?
You can use the community Instagram at IMAGO Community. and you can reach out to me, and then we can get more personal. There's also our team, our guardians, and our family that will respond to you if you want to go deeper into any threads that we touched upon. And thank you for creating this bridge as well.
Do you maybe just kind of like a? Do you have anything coming up, or is it more of a community where people are integrated in that? Do you work remotely? How does that kind of look in a broad way?
Yes, thank you so much. We are at this moment in the consultation of the weaving for the calendar for the 2025. We recently came out from our cyclical prayer for the fall or / spring equinox, within which we make offering, once again listening to this cycle of the year and of the calendar. We gather for at least 4 times a year. That's our settled moments, which is for the solstices and for the equinoxes, and there's other gatherings around that. At this moment, the biggest and most interesting offering that we have is a gathering in Alto Paraíso in the central northern central Brazil, which is called Awakening Chacaruna, or Despertando Chacaruna, which is a prayer of planting the seeds of the realization within the prophecy of us as being the bridge people, the people that bridge the ancestral to the new time, different dimensions and baskets of knowledge. That's a gathering at which we will be present, working with the medicine of Uni, Ayahuasca, below the roof of the Comunidade IMAGO, or IMAGO Community Brazil, where we are established as an official plant medicine organization, inverted commas, church. And our main teacher, Alejo Tucuyapa, will be present there. So if somebody feels called to go for a deeper dive and a deeper study, that will be 1 week from April 12th to April 19th, auspiciously also celebrating my 4.0, my 40th birthday. And before that, we will most probably be gathering in Costa Rica also for the spring equinox, and receiving people for more intimate work here at our home. So if you feel called to learn more, to commune, to get to know us, please don't hesitate to reach out. We, if you're attentive to and follow our Instagram account, we'll also be reviving the weavings of the word with our community, where it's completely free to join and to bring your wisdom and to learn with our teachers and to read the calendar, know where we are, and basically be dropping into these codes as we've been doing throughout our session here today.
Well, amazing, Miow. I think you mentioned you saw in my podcast where I interviewed Amika, and my friend who translated that his name is Claude, and he's actually the one who introduced me. He introduced me to that word bridge keeper, and I think he does a beautiful job at that, and I think you're doing a very beautiful job of that, and kind of in that spirit of Amika, who I think we tried to honor in this podcast. That idea of the Diro Amasa, the children of the new dawn, the people who can weave the word and weave the medicine of the 4 directions to create a new Maloka, a new earth, a new proposal of time and space. I really honor your work and that you're doing that, and I think you're doing it very beautiful. So I hope we keep in touch. I hope this is the beginning of something, and I really wish you all the best. And again, thank you very much for coming on and sharing from your heart.
May it be, my brother. Thank you, and praying for all of the work that you're doing to continue blossoming and reaching the people that it corresponds. so that this new awareness of caring for this wisdom and in a beautiful, reverent way, opening it in the new world can continue. Thank you so much, and looking forward to connecting more.
All right, everyone, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed listening to and hopefully connecting with Miow and taking in a lot of the deep wisdom that he's been able to learn on his journey. As I mentioned in the intro, myself and my colleague Marav Artsy are continuing to run our plant dietas. Probably when this is released, we'll already have started our following one, which is in the Sacred Valley of Peru in November, but that one even as of now is sold out. But we have another one coming up in the Sacred Valley of Peru in February, which we still do have spaces left. And then we've also just opened up our first European dieta, which will be in Portugal. I believe the dates are April 21st to May 8th. And then we're also in the works of finalizing the dates and location of our second European dieta, which will be in Ireland. Most likely, when this podcast is released, that will be finalized and up on my site. So if you're interested in working with myself and going deeper into this world of plant medicine, those are really beautiful opportunities. You can find more information about that on my website at nicotianarustica.org. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And as always, if you're able to support this podcast, that's a really big help to me. Patreon is a really beautiful option. You can support for as little as $1 a month. There's also different tiers you can sign up for. Those tiers also give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. To all the people supporting that way, as always, thank you very much for your support. And if you're able to do that, thank you in advance. One of the things I really like about that website is it works off this idea of reciprocity. So if you feel like you're gaining something from this podcast, that's a really big way to give back and to show your support. So I think that's it. My following guests after this episode, I'll be releasing an episode with a really beautiful herbalist, a medicine woman, author. Her name is Carol Guyette. She wrote a really beautiful book that I read on my own journey, which is called Herbalism. Actually, I have it right next to me. The Herbalist Guide to Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Beyond. And it was very, I think, invaluable in my own journey with the birth of my son. She's a really wonderful woman. She actually does very similar work to what we're doing, working with plants, kind of bridging different traditions, working with dieta. She was recommended to me by a dear friend, Kathy Coyle. So it was a really beautiful conversation. I was really happy to have her on. And then the episode after that will be with a Shipibo healer, curandero, Onaya, named Purvis. That was a really fascinating conversation. First time I've interviewed a Shipibo person in a long time. Really the main kind of barrier for that has been internet connection. All of my previous interviews have been in person, but I haven't been in that region in a while. But thanks to technology, we were able to do it. It was a bit challenging with all the kind of technical difficulties of signals cutting in and out, but we were able to do it. So that's a really good conversation as well. After that, I'm unsure, but as always, I hope to bring on some really fascinating guests. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope this finds you all well, and I will see you all on the next episode.
Parten silencio, oscuridad en su esplendor.
Florece luz, primer latido, la grande nada en su espejo. Aguas de madre parten silencio, oscuridad en su esplendor. Florece luz, primer latido, la grande nada en su espejo. Venga el rayo, rayito, rayote, acompañado de 9 colores, fecunda mares, lagunas y ríos, planta el taguare, cuerda historia. Venga el rayo, rayito, jinaka, acompañado de 9 colores, fecunda mares, lagunas y ríos, planta el taguare, cuerda historia. Desciende cristal hacia la pacha, 2 otorongos rugen los cantos. Va balanceando la gran canoa, bastón brillante enraizando. Desciende cristal hacia la pacha, 2 otorongos rugen los cantos. Va balanceando la gran canoa, bastón brillante enraizando. Padre y yapa, trae tu trueno con la memoria del sueño sagrado. Relampaguito, afianza la flecha, reciba recitos bajo tus llamas. Padre y yapa, trae tu trueno con la memoria del sueño sagrado. Relampaguito, afianza la flecha, reciba recitos bajo tus llamas. Aguas de madre parten silencio, oscuridad en su esplendor. Florece luz, primer latido, la grande nada en su espejo. Aguas de madre parten silencio, oscuridad en su esplendor. Florece luz, primer latido, la grande nada en su reflejo. El rayo, rayito, rayote, acompañado de 9 colores, fecunda mares, lagunas y ríos, planta el taguare, cuerda historias. Venga el rayo, rayito, jinaka, acompañado de 9 colores, fecunda mares, lagunas y ríos, planta el taguare, cuerda historia. cristal hacia la pacha, dos otorongos rugen los cantos. Va balanceando la gran canoa, bastón brillante enraizando. Desciende cristal hacia la pacha, dos otorongos rugen los cantos. Va balanceando la gran canoa, bastón brillante enraizando. Padre Iyapa, trae tu trueno con la memoria del sueño sagrado. Relampaguito, afianza la flecha, reciba recitos bajo tus llamas. Padre Iyapa, trae tu trueno con la memoria del sueño sagrado. Relampaguito, afianza la flecha, reciba recitos bajo tus llamas.